Maybe toppling the Gaddafi regime was the easy part. Libya's new rulers are now committed to building a united, democratic state from the ruins of the colonel's dictatorship. Can it be done? Well, as yet, there's no fully functioning government in Tripoli. My guest today, the chief operations manager of Libya's stabilisation team, Arif Ali Nayed, is in Dubai, where he also happens to be Libya's ambassador. So how long will it take for the new Libya to emerge? Arif Ali Nayed in Dubai, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
There is no fully functioning central government in Tripoli. Why not?
Well, I don't think that that's an accurate statement, actually. The caretaker executive team has been in Tripoli. And from the very early days of the liberation of Tripoli, Dr. Ali Tarhouni, the Deputy Prime Minister, came into Tripoli, and ministers also. And government is being run out of the building of the Prime Ministership or the Prime Minister's office. Most ministers are in Tripoli, or at least have been in Tripoli. Some of them have gone to Benghazi for consultations, but there is a central government.
Well, it's interesting the way you phrase it. Most ministers, you say, have been in Tripoli, and indeed, I dare say, most of them have at one time or another, but it's clear that a lot of them are not staying in Tripoli. There isn't this sense of a coherent central government, fully functioning, with ministries operating in the capital city. And let me just quote you, a UN official in Tripoli, Ahmed Fawzi, the other day said, they need to be seen to be running the country from Tripoli, and we haven't seen it yet.
Well, I have seen every single minister in Tripoli and held meetings with all ministers in Tripoli. Cabinet meetings happened in Tripoli. As you know, we are very much in transition. This particular week was a very busy week in New York and in Washington, and several of the highest level officials were out of the country for those meetings. And there has been extensive consultations in Benghazi and also in Misrata and Zintan and Zawiya and several other cities. I hope that you don't see these consultations as a weakness. You should be seeing them as a strength of the government. There is a seat of government. The President and the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, all the ministers have functioned and are functioning from Tripoli. So I think that the notion that there is no central government is inaccurate and actually dangerous. If you're looking for central command and control of the type that Gaddafi exercised, we have had a revolution precisely because we don't want that kind of up-down government. What you have now is a network of networks of people who are in touch with their localities and who are able to keep the country together and keep the main functions of government going. People do have electricity, water, basic health, schools have reopened, banks have reopened. So I think we have to be fair with what's happening.
No, I don't underestimate the infrastructure achievements there have been in Tripoli. I've seen the reports of the utilities coming back on stream and everything else. But here's what Mustafa Faturi, a Libyan political analyst who's been writing a lot about the state of governance and politics in your country, says. He says the current National Transitional Council lacks vision, legitimacy and power on the ground. And those who have legitimacy, he says, are by and large the people who actually fought in the war.
Well, I respect every Libyan's views, and every Libyan is entitled to their views. The way I see it is, I feel that the National Transitional Council has consensus on legitimacy and of legitimacy of unprecedented kind. Not since King Idris's time have we seen a true national consensus. And this consensus is real. Legitimacy is provided by all the Libyan people. We must understand that fighting has much broader meanings than just shooting guns. You know, mothers who lost their children, and people who have fed the young fighters, and people who have supplied them, and people who have made all arrangements for taking care of the wounded, and so on. All these heroic Libyans who have worked so hard are part of this revolution, and the legitimacy is ultimately with the Libyan people, not with any subset of the Libyan people. And I believe that the National Transitional Council has that legitimacy. As for the power on the ground, well, they're you know, keeping the country together, liberating one town and city after the other. Libya is a vast country of 1,750,000 kilometers squared, and it's not an easy task. And I think the council has done an amazing job.
Let's talk about security specifically. Obviously, the first priority, the first obligation of any governing authority has to be to ensure the security of its people and to command and control the armed and security forces. This again is about legitimacy, isn't it? In the sense that the National Transitional Council actually doesn't control many of the armed forces who fight in its name. We've seen from Sirte to Bani Walid and many other places that actually on the ground command and control sits with different militias.
Well, I don't like the word militias. I don't think it's a proper word to use for our heroic young people. These young people were not military personnel. They had to fight for their freedom and for the freedom of Libya. And, you know, what's most important is that if you ask any of these young people who they're fighting for, they will tell you that they're fighting for Libya. And if you ask them if they recognize and answer to the National Transitional Council and its head, Mr. Mustafa Abdul Jalil, they will tell you, of course. So, you know, you keep looking for this centralized army with top-down kind of exertion of power. That's exactly what the people revolted against. That's not the kind of tyranny that we want. And so long as everybody is fighting for the same cause and are united around the vision of a democratic and free Libya, I see all these forces as part of the forces of the National Transitional Council, because that's how they see themselves.
Well, hang on, let me stop you. Let me stop you for a moment.
From the ground up.
Your assertion is interesting, but let me quote you just one commander, for example, Ismail Salabi, the commander of forces in Benghazi, who has Islamist affiliations and who's made it quite plain that he opposes the involvement of so many former Gaddafi officials at the top of the National Transitional Council.
Of course, I have tremendous respect for this young man who led many battles for the freedom of the country. And when you quote him, you must understand that he speaks in two capacities. He speaks as a commander in a group of young fighters, and as such, he does obey the orders of the head of the National Transitional Council, Mustafa Abdul Jalil, has always asserted that he is affiliated with the National Transitional Council. Now, he also has another capacity. As a fellow Libyan, he's entitled to his personal opinion, and you know, he can have any opinion he likes. And that's the beauty. That's what we fought for. So I also don't like the use of these adjectives, you know, Islamists and non-Islamists and so on. The Libyan people are Muslim people, and I think these adjectives are not that helpful, to tell you the truth. They're divisive, and you know, can actually lead to a kind of polarization, which the country can definitely do without.
Well, I want to talk more about that in a moment. Before we get there, let's just finish on this idea about what's happening on the ground with the different elements of the military under the control of the National Transitional Council. Again, we've seen commanders on the ground around Sirte, for example, where the attempt is obviously to finally, once and for all, take the town, claim that there's a lack of organization, there's a lack of resources and ammunition getting to the front line. It's the same sort of story we've heard from time to time in Bani Walid. The question is, how long is it going to take to mop up the remaining pockets of resistance and, indeed, to do as you want to do, and that is capture or kill Gaddafi?
Well, I don't like the word mop-up, and I don't like seeing any fellow Libyans as objects of any aggressive activity. The reason these campaigns are taking so long is because the National Transitional Council and the heroic fighters from Misrata, from the east, from Zintan, from Zawiya, from Tripoli, all recognize that they are dealing with fellow Libyans. They have been incredibly patient, trying to negotiate a way into these towns, and trying to ask the population to liberate itself rather than be in any way invaded from the outside. No Libyan will accept that kind of imposition of will on any fellow Libyans, and we already see these strategies working. Many people are either fleeing these cities where there are concentrations of Kataib and mercenaries who want to fight on, and we are seeing many towns that have liberated themselves in the south, tens and tens of towns. Unfortunately, people focus on these couple of cases where we're having some difficulties, but these difficulties are accepted difficulties in that the National Transitional Council and the young fighters are being patient and prudent, and they want to achieve the liberation of these towns with the least bloodshed.
You're chief of the stabilisation team. Can there be stability in Libya as long as Gaddafi remains uncaptured and free to, as he is, broadcast his messages of defiance?
Well, I think these messages of defiance are meaningless and actually ludicrous, and it is possible to have a stable Libya. Of course, he will be annoying us from time to time, but this annoyance does not amount to any real challenge to the sovereignty, integrity and unity of Libya. It is possible for Libya to be stable. I would like to add that the chairman of the stabilization team is Dr. Ahmed Ijhani, who is the Minister of Reconstruction and Infrastructure, and the stabilization team is over 70 young Libyans who are working very hard with all the local councils. So it's actually hundreds and hundreds of Libyans who are together stabilizing their country.
If the stabilization team is indeed so big and so impressively led, how come so many thousands of weapons, including anti-tank shells, mortar rounds, many other serious weapons, have been allowed to be